Today, we're diving into an ancient teaching that has the power to bend your reality like never before. It's a practice that taps into the profound connection between your mind, body, and the energy that flows within. Now, as you sit up straight, let's open up this channel to the brain. In one slow, steady breath, as you inhale, lift those muscles, the perineum, front and back, simultaneously. Feel that energy coursing through you as you contract and lock down the first center. Squeeze and milk that energy out of there. Now follow your breath into the second center, pulling your belly button close to your spine. Inhale slowly and steadily, locking down the second center. Continue this journey, pulling the energy up into your upper abdomen, squeezing all three lower centers. As you do this, something incredible happens. You begin to push the cerebral spinal fluid up, following your breath into your chest, shoulders down, through your throat, straightening your spine. Keep following it all the way up to the top of your head. Remember, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Direct that energy right to the top of your head. Now, why do we ask you to inhale and hold your breath? This isn't about turning purple and pushing hard. No, it's a slow, steady breath, contracting and coordinating those muscles. Follow your breath to the top, either to the crown of your head or to the space where the pineal gland resides. When you reach the top, hold your breath. Contract those intrinsic muscles, lift them up, compress and push that cerebral spinal fluid into your brain. It's not about holding your breath harder, it's about squeezing those muscles with intention. But why do we go through this intricate process? Because, my friends, when you do this breath, you're demonstrating a will greater than any program. You're tapping into a level of intensity and passion that transcends the body, mind, and any addiction to emotion. It's about inspiration, the movement of energy. Don't be afraid, surrender into it. For some, this journey may lead to unusual sensations or movements in the body. Don't let fear grip you. This is just energy finding its way into your brain. If you experience lapses of consciousness or find yourself on the ground, it's a sign you're getting close, doing it correctly. Embrace it, surrender into it. Now let's shift gears and explore the profound impact of emotions on our reality. Imagine a woman who faced the unimaginable, her husband's sudden and tragic suicide. The emotions that surged through her were the hormones of stress wreaking havoc on her body. Pain, resentment, guilt, confusion, anger, a cocktail of stress-induced emotions. These emotions, left unmanaged, became a continuous loop, shaping her mood, temperament, and ultimately her health. The body, unable to distinguish between the actual event and the relived memories, started to suffer. She became paralyzed from the waist down, bedridden, unable to work, her stress levels soaring. The chemistry of stress signaling the wrong genes in the wrong way. Picture this. A woman facing the relentless onslaught of stress, like waves crashing one after the other. As the stress continued to pile up, her condition took a nosedive. It was like a roller coaster, but instead of thrilling highs, it was plummeting lows. Massive ulcerations became the new unwelcome guests, showing up in various mucous membranes of her body. It was as if her body was screaming, trying to cope with the overwhelming stress. And then came the diagnosis: esophageal cancer. The word cancer alone is enough to send shivers down anyone's spine, and for her, it brought an added layer of fear. Now, imagine the fear gripping her heart as she confronted the grim possibility of leaving her children without a mother. The weight of that thought alone could crush even the strongest of spirits. It was a downward spiral, a seemingly inevitable journey into darkness. But as they say, every cloud has a silver lining. In the midst of this turmoil, she decided to attend one of our workshops. Picture her, crutches, a wheelchair, and a walker, symbols of the physical toll this journey had taken on her. Yet in those challenging moments, she found a glimmer of hope. What she discovered in that workshop was nothing short of miraculous. She stumbled upon the power to change her biology, to alter the course of her seemingly predetermined fate. It wasn't an easy journey, not by a long shot. Doubt crept in like a shadow, questioning whether this path could truly lead to transformation. However, she held on to something powerful, the understanding that every day was an opportunity to knock on the genetic door. Each day presented a chance to rewrite the script that seemed to have already been written. It required persistence, a determined spirit that refused to succumb to the doubts that lurked in the corners of her mind. In this challenging journey, daily meditations became her anchor. Picture her carving out a few moments each day amidst the chaos, closing her eyes and delving into a practice that went beyond the physical. It was a mental and spiritual anchor, grounding her in the belief that change was possible. Through consistent practice, she began noticing significant changes, and in front of an audience, she shared her miraculous transformation. No evidence of esophageal cancer, no ulcerations, no paralysis, no loss of motor function. A new husband, and most importantly, a new personality, a new reality. This ancient teaching, my friends, is not just about the breath, it's about mastering your emotions. When we let emotions from the past control our thoughts, we get stuck in our biology. The body, living as if the traumatic event is happening repeatedly, creates a feedback loop. Ever felt like you're stuck in a never-ending loop of bad moods and temper tantrums? It happens to the best of us. The loop starts with a mood, maybe you're feeling down or upset about something. Then it slowly transforms into a temperament, a way of being that's hard to shake off. And before you know it, people around you are wondering why you're so upset all the time. It's like being a prisoner of your own past. The loop traps us, making it nearly impossible to think beyond our feelings. Our body's chemistry gets stuck in the past, and we find ourselves caught in a loop of suffering. It's like replaying the same sad song over and over again, and we can't seem to switch to a different track. But here's the thing, you have the power to break free from this loop. Yes, you heard it right. The story of a woman who faced unimaginable loss teaches us just that. She didn't let the loop define her future. Instead, she took charge and changed her story. Now, you might wonder how she did it. Well, it's all about the power of visualization. She didn't just see a bleak future full of suffering, she envisioned something different. Every day, even on the days when doubt knocked on her door, she committed to a simple practice: meditation. In her mind's eye, she created a clear picture of a future beyond the pain. It was like painting a new canvas where joy and health replaced suffering. She knew that her feelings were the key to changing her thoughts. It wasn't just wishful thinking, it was a deliberate effort to transform her biology. The power lies within you. Whether it's through the breath or mastering your emotions, the key is consistency and persistence. You have the ability to reshape your biology and create a reality beyond your wildest dreams. So dive deep into this ancient practice, surrender into the energy, and watch as your reality begins to bend and mold to the vision you hold in your heart. So then, is it possible then that that person, in the same brain circuitry, in the same emotions of the past, are viewing their life through the lens of the past, and they're not seeing things how they are? They're actually perceiving and seeing things how they are, and they're telling a story in their mind that's actually causing them to perceive life equal to that story. Are you with me still? So then you ask that person, so why are you this way? And they'd say, I'm so glad you asked, because I get to talk about my past. And as they talk about the incidents in their past, would you agree then that they're saying, that was the event that changed me, and I haven't actually been able to change since that event? That event has defined me as the person I am today, yes or no? Now, the research on memory says after a period of time, that story that they tell of their past, 50% of it isn't even the truth. So they're making stuff up. They are reliving a miserable life they never even had, just to reaffirm, to recreate the emotions, to excuse themselves from changing. So then, most people then, they may say with the 5% of their conscious mind, I want a new life, I want a new relationship, I want a new career, or I am healthy, But if 95% of who they are is subconsciously programmed into the past, then that thought of their health, that thought of their wealth is never going to make it to the body, because the body is programmed into the past. How many people understand? So then if you teach a person then how to be defined by a vision of the future, instead of the memories of the past, then they would have to really start thinking differently. Would you agree? They would have to start making different choices than the choices that they always make. Yes or no? They're going to have to start doing different things and breaking certain habits, and that's going to be uncomfortable. Yes or no? Because the body is going to say, why are we doing this? It's so much more fun suffering than going out for a walk into joy. I don't know if I believe in joy, I believe in suffering. The body goes back. And so that person would have to stop talking certain ways. They would have to start staying away from certain experiences with certain people. You know what I'm talking about, yes? They would have to examine their emotional state every single day. They'd have to stay conscious of their emotional state, because the moment they started feeling suffering, they're just disconnected from the energy of their future. They're back to the energy and the emotions of their past. So then, teaching people then how to be defined by a vision of the future every single day means they're going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty, and you may not be able to predict the next moment because you're no longer feeling like you. That's the moment you just left the known and you stepped into the unknown. Are you with me still? Now, if the body has been conditioned into the familiar past or the predictable future, and the body has become the mind of the past or the predictable future, would you agree? Then the body would say, what are you doing? And the body would say, listen, let's get you thinking like you've been thinking. 90% of the thoughts that we think on a daily basis are the same thoughts as the day before. So if you think that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and 90% of your thoughts are the same known thoughts that you're always thinking, then your life should stay the same, because the same thoughts lead to the same choices. The same choices lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences. The same experiences produce the same emotions. Those same emotions tend to influence the way we think, and our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry, our hormones, and even our gene expression is equal to how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality, and your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. If you want to create a new personal reality, a new life, you're going to have to change your personality. And you've got to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You've got to become aware of your unconscious habits and behaviors, even how you speak. And you have to look at the emotions that you live by every single day and decide, do these emotions belong in my future? So many people try to create a new life as the same person. In order to create a new personal reality, you've got to change your personality. So the principle in neuroscience says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. Thinking the same way, making the same choices, demonstrating the same actions, creating the same experiences that stamp the same networks of neurons into the same patterns, all for the familiar feeling called you. And you do that for 10 years in a row. Well, you're going to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature because you're firing and wiring that way. And that box in the brain, that becomes our personality, becomes our identity. And by the time we're 35 years old, for the most part, we've done something so many times that the body now knows how to do it as well as the mind. And that's a habit. So we have these unconscious programs of behaviors, automatic habits, redundant emotional reactions, hardwired beliefs, perceptions, attitudes that function just like a computer program. You press go and it runs automatically. When it comes time to change, thinking positively is going to do nothing because your body has been conditioned for the most part into a program in the past. Thought never makes it to the body because the body's on a different program. How do we begin to influence the body so that the thought actually produces some type of change? Think about it. If you think an unhappy thought, you're going to feel unhappy. If you think you're a failure, you're going to feel like a failure. Once you feel like a failure, you're going to think you're a failure. And people get caught in these loops of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking, and that redundancy is a conditioning process because all you need is an image or a picture or a thought and a feeling and a response, stimulus response. And so people tend to condition their brain and body into the past. When it comes time to change, you've got to leave that familiar territory. And any choice that you make, if you said, hey, I'm going to eat a better diet, I'm going to wake up early and work out, I'm going to do meditation, the moment you decide to do something differently, get ready because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unfamiliar. There's going to be some uncertainty. You're not going to be able to predict the next moment. That means you've left your known biology and you're stepping into the unknown. Theoretically, that sounds great. But if the body has been conditioned into a familiar feeling, it's in the known. The moment you take it outside the familiarity, it wants to go back to where it's comfortable. Repeating it over and over again is sustaining or maintaining those connections, and that's called memory. So they memorized what they were doing by physically practicing or personalizing what they learned. Make sense? Standard simple. It took the second group of people, and they said, listen, we want you to play 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. We're going to scan your brain before and after, but you know what we're going to do? We're not going to tell you how to play anything. You just come and do whatever you want, play whatever you want. So at the end of 2 weeks, guess what happened to them? Nothing. You know why? Because they couldn't remember what they had learned the day before, and they couldn't remember what they played the day before, and they had no structure. They got no instruction and no knowledge to be able to apply it to make some steady circuits. It took the third group of people, and they said, listen, don't even show up. Don't even create your day. Same thing. Nothing happens. Last group of people, they said, listen, we want you to come 2 hours a day for 2 weeks. We're going to show you these one-handed exercises. But instead of you physically playing the piano, we want you to mentally rehearse over and over again those exercises. We know you're going to get tired, so we'll nudge you and we'll keep you awake, but you practice for 2 hours a day and you keep repeating those. At the end of 2 weeks, they rescanned their brain, and guess what happened? Same area of the brain lit up as if they were actually playing the scales. Now, you know what that means? They grew new circuits in their brain just by thinking about it, just by thinking, just by rehearsing. Now, every time we learn something new, we make new circuits in the brain. If you learn anything new, learning is making a new connection in the brain, new neurological connection. Memory is maintaining or sustaining those connections, keeping them alive. And the only way that we maintain and sustain connections in the brain is by repetition. Repetition allows the neurons to develop a long-term relationship. So these people every single day made it the most important thing. They gave up their social engagements. They gave up television. They said, I'm going to rehearse. I'm going to mentally rehearse the greatest ideal of myself every single day. And as long as I keep doing it every day, what's going to happen to those circuits? They're going to light up and become the more sustainable circuits to act as a platform of who they will become in the future. During this process of rehearsal, while they were sitting down rehearsing who they were going to be, just like the piano players rehearsing over and over again, they had long moments where they lost track of time and space. In other words, they became so involved with what they were doing that when they opened their eyes or they lifted up their eye masks or when they turned the lights on in the room, it was 2 hours later and it only seemed like 5 minutes. They were so involved with what they were doing that they lost the feedback of the body, they lost the feedback from the environment, and they lost track of time. And the moment that that happens, geniuses. That's the moment we walk through the door to the quantum field. And that is the moment, by the way, according to neuroscience, that we repattern and rewire the brain. And by the way, guess what part of the brain is the most active when we do that? the frontal lobe, because isn't it true that we're making thought more real than anything else in that moment? And because the frontal lobe is the orchestra leda, it has its connections to the rest of the brain. And what it does is it quiets down the association centers, the thinking centers. It quiets down the motor centers. You don't want to move, you could still. It quiets down the emotional centers. And the only thing that's real is the thought. And when we capture that thought in the frontal lobe, when the frontal lobe captures it as we hold that thought there, what happens is the rest of the neurons in the brain will pattern and make circuits to capture that thought and reflect it as a footprint of whatever we're focusing on. And when we make new circuits in our brain, by the way, do you think that we'll perceive things that maybe already existed, but we never really saw? Do you think that's possible? Do you think that the person who lives practicing being a victim every day gets good at it? Turn that on automatically? Is it natural and second nature? And how will they perceive their world based on how they're wired? So if you made new circuits in your brain, do you think you may process or see things in your reality different because now you're wired to see them? Do you accept that? So if I put up a picture of a Monet on the screen up here, and I said to you, isn't that a beautiful picture of what Monet painted? You guys would all say, oh yeah, that's beautiful. And then I took the picture down and I said, did you guys know anything about Monet? Do you know that he spent 44 years of his life teaching himself how to see things differently? So many people have so many interesting definitions about what they think love is. Some people have it in terms of need, some people have it in terms of sexuality, some people have it in terms of control and dominance and success. And those are different experiences that really don't lead to this concept called love. And so my theory in a relationship, I was in Australia for 3 weeks, and I was on all these television shows and all these radio shows. And by the end of this tour, I was at the Establishment Hotel in Sydney, and I was sitting with a CNN reporter, an attractive woman. And she said, how come I can't create the relationship that I want? And I said, let me ask you a question. Would you go out with you? Which is really the fundamental question. So I have a couple of theories about relationships that I think are really important. First of all, I will never work in a relationship, and I don't think anybody should work in a relationship. I think if you're working in a relationship, something is not clicking, something is not right. But if you bring your best, and the person that you're with brings their best, and you celebrate your life together, then there's constructive interference, there's growth, there's energy. If you're not at your best and you show up, more than likely you're going to pick someone or something apart. And it's better that you remove yourself for a period of time and get back into your heart and present yourself at your best. And so if you're not there and you need a mirror or a reflection, then it's good to ask, am I missing something? Am I not seeing myself in some way? And then there's a healthy conversation when you invite it. But if you're not invited to contribute your opinion, then it's better off that you don't. So people always say, I want a loving relationship, but what they really want is happiness. We do these meditations to create love in our lives, and it could be love in familial relationships with your siblings. It could be with your parents. It could be with your friends, or it could be with a significant other. If thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge in the quantum field, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life. Can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the event has already occurred? The latest research in neuroscience says you can change your brain from living in the past to living in the future. And can you fall in love with that vision to such a degree that you come out of your resting state and change guilt or suffering into inspiration and joy and gratitude? To such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, does not know the difference between that external event and what you're creating internally, so that your body believes it's living in that future in the present moment. And you begin to signal new genes in new ways to change your body to look like the event has already occurred. The latest research in epigenetics says you can change your body by thought alone. Now reason this with me. If there's physical evidence in your brain and body to look like the event has already occurred, your brain and body are no longer living in the past, they're living in the future. And you will walk right into your vision, something new you wanted to experience. And the moment you started thinking about this experience, the moment you started contemplating this potential reality, you turned on a part of your brain called the frontal lobe, the crowning achievement of the human being. It's 40% of your entire brain. It is the creative center, and it has connections to all other parts of the brain. And the moment you said, what would it be like to be a leader? What would it be like to be successful? What would it be like to have this vision come true? The moment you asked that open-ended question, you turned on this part of the brain, because the rest of the brain is just a bunch of automatic programs, and now the frontal lobe, the creative center, wakes up. And it has connections to the entire brain. It's the CEO, it's the boss, it's the symphony leader of the brain. And the moment you get creative, the frontal lobe begins to select different networks of neurons that are stored in your brain from things you've learned or experienced. And as you begin to think a what-if question, it begins to select these different networks and begins to seamlessly piece them together and making your brain fire in new sequences and in new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind. Because mind is the brain in action. Mind is the brain at work. And the moment those neurons fire in tandem, you get a picture in your mind, a hologram, a vision. For those people who are passionate, that thought that they're thinking begins to create an elevated emotion. They become inspired. They feel enthusiastic. They become passionate. They started to open their hearts. And all of a sudden, they're combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion. And it's the combination of a clear intention and an elevated emotion in our research over and over again that proves then the person now is changing fundamentally, changing biologically, changing internally. And their brain and body are moving from living in the past into living in the future. When you do that, when you had that moment, you came out of your resting state and then you started to write down all the things you were going to do to get to that vision, all the choices you were going to make, all of the experiences or goals you wanted to achieve, and all of the emotions and the joy you would feel. And when you were doing that, you were setting your sights towards that destiny. And then you did something really brilliant. You wrote down the choices you weren't going to make. You became aware of the behaviors you weren't going to demonstrate. You began to review certain experiences you wanted to stay away from. And then you looked at the emotions that would bring you to a lower level. And you began to separate the old self from the new self. And when you begin to do that, and you're observing the old self, it means you're no longer the program. Now you're the consciousness observing the program. And that's when you begin to objectify your subjective self. And so the moment you stop making the same choices that you always make, get ready, because it's going to be uncomfortable. And that's the moment you're heading towards the new self. Do you think that you can change the circuits in your brain by thinking about it? So I did this experiment a little ways back. They took these people who never played the piano before, and they separated them into 4 categories. And they said, listen, we're going to scan your brains before you learn these exercises, and then we're going to scan your brain after. And all you have to do is show up for 2 hours a day in practice for 2 weeks, okay? And just follow the instructions.